Yeah. Just dance a little longer. I like it. I like the longer intro.
Right?
Yes.
Well, I was just sitting there thinking as we were dancing in that
Mm.
really our dancing in to the podcast is one of my favorite times of the week. That it's a moment to just breathe and dance and, pretty much midweek right
Yeah.
here at Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So it's nice to take a dance break midweek.
Absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes you wonder, do I feel like dancing? And then here comes the music, and of course, how could you not? How could you not move to the beat, you know? So, one of those things that spark joy. It's interesting. I wasn't planning on talking about this. Guess who I met this week at work?
Oh,
I don't know if I could
tell
tell you
me.
this.
Can you tell me? Well, people don't know where you were. I mean, they don't know your location. So,
So this week met Chris Tucker at work, right?
okay.
And took care of him, came in for a special guest, right? They enjoyed themselves. Of course, I'm going to take care of anybody like um they're special. And so just because you're a celebrity, like I treat you like I treat anybody, right? And so they thoroughly enjoyed themselves. And I had an opportunity to talk to him again at the end of the event. And he thanked me and told me all this stuff about how I made their visit special, right? But I made sure to tell him that he's brought so much joy to our life because of all the laughs and everything that he's done with his movies. When I think about Chris Tucker, I can't help but either laugh or think about laughing. So I made sure to thank him for a little more joy during the quarantine.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What a fun thing to be able to thank somebody
Exactly.
for bringing you joy. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah,
What
and
was
it
your
ties into what
favorite
we're
movie
talking
that
about.
he was in?
Rush Hour. Well,
Okay.
that's the one that I usually think about, you know? And when we talk about communication, I just thought it was so funny. The whole time Jackie Chan knew how to speak English. It was hilarious, you know, and he was right. You just assumed that I didn't know. So I guess that goes into social wellness, right?
Right? I love that. Well,
Yes.
you know my story with one of our friends of the show, Karen Drucker,
Mm,
right? Do you know that
mm.
origin story?
I don't know. Tell me again.
So Karen Drucker is a singer-songwriter who I love. I love her
Yes.
music. I use it with my clients. I use it for myself. And one day I was having a really tough day and I was like, okay, what would you tell a client? And I thought, I tell a client to put on a piece of your favorite music
Mm,
and dance around and shift
mm,
this energy. And so
mm,
I put on a Karen Drucker song and I danced around and boy, my energy shifted. And so from that place, I just reached out, found, and at this point, I didn't know her. And I wrote an email out into the void, like
mm.
assuming an assistant would get it or it might never make it to her. But I found her, on her
Yeah.
website email and just wrote her a note and said, thank you. Like, thank you for your work. Thank you for what you do. Kind of what you just said you did with Chris, right?
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
thank you for bringing me this joy. Well, this was years ago. And she responds back and she says, hey, you made my day. I got
mhm,
this email and she said, oh, and by the way, and she's in California. She's like, I'm going to be in Georgia for a women's retreat. Do you want
mhm.
to go and meet me there? I was like, why,
Of
yes,
course.
yes, I do.
Right.
And then, so I invite everybody I know to go with me because, that's who I am. I'm a connector, right?
Mhm,
And I go and I get to go meet her ahead of time because I had invited so many people. I got
mhm,
VIP status, right?
mhm.
And at the time, and I didn't, this was the first conference I'd ever been to where, like, if you got a certain number of people there or did you got VIP status and that meant you went to a welcome
Mhm,
banquet and then you sat at the front of the room. And I had told one of my friends that was coming, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm
mhm,
going to sit with y'all. And she was like, no, 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 no. There's a reason you're supposed to be there. So I went very first night, met Karen Drucker, talked to her about collaborating in the future. I was like, oh, check. I'm done. Like,
hmm,
I'm going to go home. And then I go and I sit at the front of the room. And I sit by this tall, elderly, like you could just tell she had presence, Black woman. And I sit by her. And you know me, I just start talking. I'm like,
mhm,
hey, da 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 da. I see that her name is Dr. Barbara Bishop. And I said, Dr. Bishop, you want to tell me about your church? She said, oh, no, honey. I just got back from the Parliament of World Religions. I've been in front of thousands of people and I'm here to rest. And I want you to tell me about you. And so Very long story short, we find out we have the connection of Texas. And at the time, this was pre pandemic, and I was working in the Georgia prison system. And somehow we got on the topic of self defense and women going to prison for the defending themselves and the difference between Georgia and Texas and basically women's rights, right? And all
Mhm.
this time, I don't know who she is. We're just talking, we're carrying on, we're having a conversation. And then people start coming up and fangirling her. And I'm like, who is she? I had no idea because she was in her sweat. She was like, I'm here to rest. She was
Mhm.
sleeping part of the time. So she ends up being the leader of the largest Black New Thought movement church in Atlanta. She's a
Mhm.
superstar, written all these books. She is the speaker that Sunday. So
Mhm.
we come in Sunday, and this was a Unity Women's Retreat. And we come in Sunday, and she has, oh, and the other part of the story was when she mentioned the Parliament of World Religions, I was like, oh, Interplay. I have friends that were just there. This was the year before I went, or 2 years before I went. I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, yeah. And so it was all these like synchronicity about click, 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 right? And so Sunday, she gets up on the pulpit. She is in all her glory. Like she is fully present. She is fully bringing the message. She has got sheets about women's rights on all of the tables. And then she's standing up there and she tells a story that she and I talked about women's rights. And she said, my new friend, and she goes, oh, honey, I'm in my 80s. Remind me your name. It was so cute. And she tells the story of women in prison and not having the same rights and da 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 da. And behind me, I heard probably 200 women get it. Like I heard them go, and get it. And I was like, oh, that's why I was there. Not to meet and dance with Karen Drucker. I thought that's why I was there, right? But I was there for this connection, this conversation, and having that impact. So, very long story. But that's just what made me think of when you talked about meeting Chris
Yeah.
and thanking him.
Yeah, and you're worth listening to, so absolutely. And that's what I love about Women Connected in Wisdom. I think about the podcast and what I say on here, right? I go through it in my mind. I'm like, I hope I don't sound too salesy. I hope I'm not trying to, but this is really what happens. You talk to
Right?
somebody and then they know somebody and then here we go with the ripple effect. And that's how life is. I love it.
Right? I
Yeah.
think about that. I think about our life stories and synchronicities and how we end up where we end up and why we do, right?
Yeah.
Should we do our official intro and kick
I
this
think we
podcast off?
should. Absolutely. This is the longest it's taken us to get there, but again, it was worth it. So yes. Hi ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial business owner, the founder of Shalo Glow, an all natural handmade shea butter company. I am a champion for your self-care, business care, and intentional wellness.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, and published author who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Together, we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast grounded in the 8 dimensions of wellness.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations about how to be wise and well in relationships and business and life. How do we do all this? I'm over here, Shannon.
Hmm?
Like all of a sudden my screen went funky and Stardew Valley pops up because
Yeah.
I still have a kid home from college and I'm like, what is happening over here? How
I
do
forgot
we do
about how
all
that
this,
used to
y'all?
happen.
How do we do all this? How
It
do we
changes.
balance it, right?
Yes. Yes, yes. And it's so interesting through COVID, it's like, oh, the schedule keeps changing. These keeps changing. I thought I set a plan and now it's different. And isn't that how life has always been? Like
Right?
season is different and you have to approach it differently to do the same thing. So I hear you.
Right. And about the time we get it figured out, things change,
They change
right?
again. Yeah.
Right? A kid
Yeah.
goes or a kid comes or,
Hmm.
a different stage or age of development, whether it's with
Hmm.
ourselves or our friends or our partners or our children. It's like, whew, I'm glad we're talking about what we're talking about today. You want to prep our
Yes.
listeners for what we're chatting about?
Yes, let's go ahead and dive into the definition. Today, we are talking about emotional and mental wellness. Emotional and mental wellness is about being intentional and aware of all of our feelings. It includes having the capacity and tools to handle and express these emotions in a healthy manner and the ability to learn and grow from experience. Emotional well being encourages autonomy and useful decision making skills in striving towards good mental health.
Whew, I like that. Striving towards good mental health.
Mhm.
Boy, almost everybody I know is struggling right now.
And in addition to the list of situations that we've had to deal with, right? It's
Hmm.
also what about mental health in general? I'm learning more about mental health and what it looks like. It's like, oh, everybody is affected. Everybody's family is affected. And I don't think that I was always thinking about it as closely as I am now before the pandemic.
Right. Well, I think it was a global. Well, I mean, we were all in trauma at that time,
Yeah,
right? And
right.
all under stress. People had
Yeah,
different kinds, of course,
yeah.
and um, people were more adversely affected than others.
Hmm.
But I think it was a moment that we had to realize that, whew, this is tough,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I can't wait to talk to our guest today. Should
Me
I
too.
introduce her and bring her up here
Yeah,
because she is an expert on on emotional and mental wellness.
let's
So
do it.
I'm just going to introduce her and we're going to pull her up on the stage. Here we go. Ilene Dillon, MSW, you know I love those initials, has dedicated her life to helping people resolve personal challenges once and for all, then create their lives as they want them to be. A transformation specialist, she has worked 50 years as a marriage counselor, psychotherapist, and coach. Ilene is a global speaker, Amazon International best-selling author, mastermind leader, podcast guest, and is currently developing her first TEDx speech, Transforming Anger into Enthusiasm. Since 2017, Ilene has worked and traveled full time in North America in her RV. Woo! Come on up here, Ilene.
Yeah, here I
Welcome,
am in
welcome
my
to our
RV. I'm
show.
in my RV. Yeah.
I love it. I love your bio because it so resembles mine. Having that master's of
Okay.
social work. And I read about what you do and who you are. And you definitely have expertise in emotional and mental wellness.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Okay. And before I get started, I have three things I would like to tie into what you guys were just talking about.
Sure.
Number one, I love the comment of the woman you were talking with who said, I'm 80. Tell me your name again. I'm turning 80 in November of this year, and I'm throwing myself a big party in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Um, Karen Drucker, uh, when my daughter, who's turning 52 this coming Saturday, when she was a young girl, about 9 or 10 years old, I sent her to a music camp in Marin County, California. And one of the people who was just getting her start in music was participating in that, and it was Karen Drucker. So I know Karen Drucker
Ilene,
too.
thank you. Because, it
Yeah,
just shows those connections, right?
yeah,
Who
yeah,
knew that today I was going to
right.
tell that story based on what Shannon said? And then you have that connection. Y'all, we did not rehearse this or talk about this before the show
That's
in any way,
that's
shape, or form.
absolutely true. Uh, and and thirdly, I'd like to say that COVID has been fairly easy for me, and I think it is because I have learned so much about emotions, and I'd like to tell people as much as I can today. So, can I just start out by saying I think most of us don't understand. We feel like things have been falling apart and we're going crazy and we can't, there's something wrong. And I want to take the position that there is nothing wrong. What happens, whether you're an individual or a whole society, is that we're all part of a giant school. The earth is a big giant school. We've all come here to learn and grow. And the way we do it is through our experiences. Now, most people do not like to change, which is what growth is all about. And so, as a therapist, what I've learned is that a person will put off growing or changing, and every time you put it off, your pain for that particular issue increases, right? So literally, we wait until our pain is so great, we think it wouldn't be any worse if we make the change. That's when we change. So, what has been happening in the world? There, and we all know this now with a little hindsight through the COVID experience, there are a number of things that we have needed to learn that we have been putting off. Among the largest of these is feeling our emotions or feeling emotions. I like not to own them because emotions are energy and the energy is designed to move. And when we say it's my fear or my anger or our emotions, we tend to hold on to them. And instead, I say the emotions or the emotions that come up in me. But we have all been taught to hold on to emotions, particularly those we consider negative, like anger. And in preparation for this TEDx speech that I've been doing, I have discovered that we now have documented proof that repressed anger, held on to anger, is a part of the etiology. It's a part of what causes the three biggest killer diseases in the United States: heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, right? So, literally, the anger that we have learned, all of us have learned to do it, anger that we've learned to hold on to is killing us in large measure, in large numbers. And let me offer a little transparency. I am a recovered angry person, and that's what my need to recover was what got me into understanding and learning about anger and how it works, and from that, all the other emotions. And there's an entire system. Once you understand it for one emotion, you can understand it for all emotions. And when we tie it in with mental health, this is the last thing I'm going to before I give you a chance to talk. When we tie it into mental health or trauma, as you guys were talking about, because emotions are energy, they need to move. And trauma occurs when you don't process, you don't let that energy move. I had a very traumatic early childhood, lost my birth mother when I was 2, a number of things. And I now, at almost 80, have a really fantastic life, and I'm not plagued by trauma anymore. And it's just because I learned how to work with emotions. And anybody, everybody can learn to work with emotions. So I'm busy writing books and traveling and giving speeches because my whole life, for as long as it holds up, is dedicated to getting the word out that emotions need to be on the move. In fact, I wrote a book, Emotions in Motion. Where is that? There's my book on Amazon. Uh, Emotions need to be on the move. And a big part of the problems that we have, whether it's physical or mental illness or depression or whatever, all has to do with the fact that we're holding on to emotions instead of using them to help us learn these lessons the way they're designed to work.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited you came to talk to us today, Ilene. When I have so many things that are bubbling up, and I'm sure Shannon does too. So I'm going to say one and then pass the mic. But the first thing I think about is about how we're designed to change. And so you talking about our emotions being on the move, and it's when we hold on that we get stuck or hold on to that trauma. So I would love, I'm going to see what Shannon has a question about, but I would love for you to like give some concrete resources or examples to our listeners. Like say they're listening today and they're like, oh, Ilene, I'm not a recovered angry person. I'm still really pissed off about what's going on in our country with the racism, with the misogyny, with the current legislation. Like, I'm mad. What do I do? Right?
It's really very simple. Every emotion has a message for us. The way I describe it is we have an experience, and with that experience, an emotion arises. It could be love, it could be loneliness, it could be anger, it could be fear, but especially one, but maybe more than one emotion will arise. Well, that emotion has a message for us, and each emotion has a different message. For example, a simple one is loneliness. Now, we mostly think that loneliness occurs when we're alone, because we're alone. But we know that you can feel lonely in a crowd or in a marriage, so that's not it. It is about energy. Loneliness is about energy. And when you feel lonely, you have more of your personal energy going out than you have energy coming in. Or another way of looking at it is you're not loving yourself enough. And an easy way to make that shift so that you are bringing energy in is to do something you have a talent for. You were talking about doing the dancing as you come in, right? That's something you guys have a talent for and you enjoy it. And it brings that in. And I'll lay you odds when you're doing it, you're not thinking about being lonely at all, right? And so anger, you know, I had a traumatic event when I was about 27 years old. I'd been married since I was 19, and my had a 10-month-old child. And my husband came home one day, my very first Mother's Day, in fact, and said, "I'm not ready to be a father, and I'm leaving." And I had no idea I was an angry person. But boy, when I got dumped like that, anger just started pouring out of me, and it was going over my child. And my dad had been very angry, and I'd had a lot of his anger on me, and I went, I can't do this to my child. And that's what set me off on the hunt. And it was pre-internet days, so I went to the libraries of huge universities and got the reference librarians to help me look. And guess what? There was no information about anger in those days. And you'll appreciate this, Christine. Therapists even did not look at emotions separate from mental illness diagnoses, right? So anger was part of schizophrenia or part of bipolar disorder, but we didn't know anything about anger itself or how to work with it. So I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing until I finally started figuring things out. And fortunately, I was a therapist, and I would say to my clients, this has worked for me. Would you like to experiment with it in your life? And many people, I mean, so many people, as you're talking about, were, desperate to learn something of what to do about emotions that they were feeling. And so they said yes. During COVID, one of the things that made COVID really great for me is I had people that had been my clients close to 40 years ago search for me on the internet and find me and say, I need to work with you again. I need a tune up. And what I discovered is that all the work that we had done on emotions with them was still working. It was still in place. That was not the issue. There were new things that had come up that they wanted to work on. So anger has two messages for us. One is that we get angry because we have an idea of how things are supposed to be in the world. We're supposed to be able to go out of our houses without wearing masks. We're supposed to uh, be able to fill our gas tank with gas without paying our rent along with it, And so when those things that we think should happen don't, or we think they should not happen and they do, that's when we get angry. I call that the universal cause of anger, right? And the other message from anger is to take action. The old, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Um, but refining this down just a little bit more, what I've discovered is that when I have a belief or an idea about how things are supposed to work and they don't work, my ideas are incorrect. So, really, the message of anger, when you get angry, is you've got an idea about something that's incorrect and you need to change it, right? So, if you don't change it, as we were saying earlier, the pain builds up, you go over and over the same things, it gets harder. But the second you change it, you're done with it. You don't have to keep doing that. So, what I suggest to people is when they feel anger in them, say, what do I think should or should not happen? and identify that and look at it and look at the reality. What, like if you're driving on the freeway and somebody cuts in front of you, a lot of people get angry about that, a driver cutting in front of them. But the reality is a lot of drivers on the freeway cut in front of other drivers, right? And so if you can remind yourself of that, I think this driver should not be cutting in front of me. But maybe 80% of all drivers do at one point or another cut in front of other drivers. Then you go, oh, so you're part of the 80%. Okay. And you don't register anger the same way.
I love that. And for me, it's like you said, what is the expectation? What did you say? When you have an idea of what's supposed to happen, right? So this person was
Mhm.
not supposed to cut me off. My car was supposed to be where their car is, right? But then you see the car in front of them and you were going the speed you were going because you knew you couldn't go past the car in front of you. So does it really matter if they cut in front of you, or are you still exactly where you would have been had they been in the other lane, And that's how I sort and separate
Hmm.
and have kept
Hmm.
myself calm through COVID too. I hear what you're saying.
I have a little phrase I use because I drive a lot. I go,
Mhm.
oh, I forgot. You own the road.
I like that. What
Well,
did
it makes
Eleanor
me
say?
laugh,
'Cause
it makes me laugh. So,
you gotta laugh at it, or if not, you'll be angry. You gotta do
right,
something
right.
else, yeah.
Yeah, let's lift up one of our listener, Eleanor's question.
Yes.
Eileen, she asked, how do you move through sadness when the
Mm.
cause never goes away?
That is a really good question. Well, first of all, you accept that you're sad. You allow yourself to feel it. Sadness usually comes in waves, particularly if it's connected to grief. It may never be over, and it's just energy that needs to come through you. And what I've found in going through some deaths in my own family is that kind of sadness comes up, that kind of grief comes up when you feel like you weren't finished, like you didn't get to tell them everything or spend all the time with that person that you wanted to. And so, another thing that you can do that may help, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but either talk to them out loud and say the things you'd like to say, or write a letter that you don't intend to send, but put it down on paper. There is power in the spoken and written word. And also, when you're doing that, you're facing fact. You're looking at things squarely. So, for example, you could say, I just love you to pieces and I miss you so much. And you can also include, and boy, that one thing you did used to drive me crazy. And I was really upset with you about that. So you can put the truth out there without having to hold it back. And if you just keep working with it and don't think of it as something that's a miss when it comes up, but almost welcome it like, oh, there are four signs of healing: crying, laughing, sweating, and shaking, right? So if you're doing crying and you're sad, go ahead and cry. In fact, watch a sad movie, stimulate it. Go ahead and let yourself feel it.
I have a question about that. So you just said crying, laughing, sweating, and shaking. Why is shaking including? I mean, I have my own theories because I do this with clients and with people through interplay, but I want to hear what you have to say on that one, Eileen.
Well, I don't remember the man's name. I apologize to him here in public, but I had an a podcast radio program for 13 years myself, and I interviewed a man who specialized in dealing with trauma. And what he pointed out is that animals, like if a deer, most of us have seen a deer get startled or whatever, you can see the skin on the deer, the fur shaking, right? And we humans are designed to do that also, but because we also learn to sit on our emotions and not move a lot, we're supposed to sit still in school, we don't do that. So he has a system where he actually has you lean up against the wall in a kind of a semi squatting position until your legs start to shake so badly you can no longer stand up, and then you can shake your whole body once you lie down. I tried it because I wanted to see if it worked. And so what it really is about recapturing a healing modality that is part of who we are as animals, but that we have bypassed.
Well, my favorite coach Deal didn't know this while we were growing up, but she was my volleyball and basketball coach for years, and she had us doing that wall trick. She didn't
Well
realize
then,
how healing it was, but that's funny. You remember that, Shannon?
I
Having to do
do.
those squats on the
It's a list of difficult exercises, and that's on them, but it's simple, but I know what you mean about the shaking. It'll
oh,
get you there
it's
pretty quick.
agonizing once you, I mean, I think you're supposed to do it for 15 or 20 minutes
Mm.
Whew.
with his exercise. And you're just
Well,
sitting there going,
I
"Ah," like
can
this.
only imagine.
I find that fascinating because recently when I did a fitness it, what are they called? Like a fitness assessment at a new gym,
Mhm,
sitting on the wall is one of the, like, how long you can do it is an
mhm.
indicator of physical wellness. So I find it fascinating that when you take it past that point and you do the shaking, that it can then be an indicator of emotional and mental wellness
But
because you're letting that go.
emotions come into the body first,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Emotions are of the body. So healing the or working with the body and working with the emotions goes together.
Oh, you're speaking my language, Eileen. Like, this is what I do through interplay and with my private clients. And, you know, we're not taught that originally as social workers.
I
We're not
know.
taught that in school, right? But when I
I
hit
know.
on it, I was like, this is it. Like,
Mhm.
the working with the body, the working with the emotions, the being able to even look at them and feel them and process them. I love this that you're doing. Shannon, you
Mm.
look like you were about to pop in there and say something.
Yeah, because I think about the same thing with Shalo Glow and the effect that it has with families and the stories that I've had with everybody. I'm actually thinking about um, starting to bring them on so people can come share their stories with Shalo Glow. Because if I just tell you, it sounds starting to
Like
bring them on so people can come share. You heard that, or was that me? Just no problem. It's okay. I said I hear my voice, but again, just like with the women connected in wisdom, and if you know, you know how amazing it is when we're connected and the things that it could lead to. It's the same thing with Shalo Glow. It feels like it's reaching to say that something so simple can have such a profound effect, but it really does, especially through
mm.
losing people. Like you were saying, Eileen, like it's helped so many people through COVID, whether it's from that or from cancer and different situations when they can take that time with themselves and their family. And it's been healing.
Yeah.
What were you going to
You
say?
said something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in reaction to what you said, but I'm almost 80 and it went right through my head. You
Well, speaking of almost 80, I was thinking when you were talking about sadness and grief and loss, I
Hmm.
was thinking about our friend and my co-author, Sheila K. Collins, who one of her books is called Warrior Mother. And it is the memoir of her losing two of her three children, two of her adult children, one to HIV AIDS and one to breast cancer 5 years later. And one of the
so
things that
sad.
she has always taught me is that we must make art out of what happens to us. And so, one of the ways she's taught me about greeting sadness and playing with sadness is that especially if it's somebody that's crossed over or died, is what can you do in their name? Like, what can you do? What was their work in the world, and how can you continue their work in the world? And so,
Mhm.
like, we've done many performances. Her son was a theater, he was into theater and loved shows. And we've done many performances on his crossing over day to honor his life and his legacy, right? And I know there's many, I don't know if they're stories, proverbs, I don't know what you would call them, but the one about that people live on until their name is said for the last time. I know I'm
Mm.
I'm messing that one up, but really just telling the stories and I loved how you said that about greeting them. And I think about it for sadness, but I think about it for other things too, right? When I love sitting around telling stories um, that make me laugh, right? When you think about
Hmm.
some things with my kids, raising them, definitely not perfect. Things have gone wrong. And you know how you get around with friends or family and you just some of your most embarrassing moments come up, but you tell the story and you laugh and instead of I used to be really sensitive and get upset and be like, "What? Oh, why are you saying that? Why are you doing that?" Right? And then until I realized, oh, yeah, like I didn't die from that. I'm human. I messed up. Like greeting even the embarrassment and being able to let it go or change it or I don't know what you would call it in your system, but
Well, what you really do is end up releasing the energy,
mhm,
right? So emotions, uh, we have the experience, the emotions rise up in us in some way so that we're aware that we have them. Then we take a look at what their message is. And this book that I was talking about that I wrote, Emotions in Motion, I go the wrong direction every time. I have 12 emotions in there, and the signal of each one or the message of each one.
mm,
So you can identify the message, and that gives you the clue of how to work on your experience, what needs to be learned. Like if it's anger, all right, I need to look at what idea have here that got violated, what expectation, and see what new thing I can bring in. And so that's what emotions are for. And unfortunately, I don't know when it started, but generations ago, we started demonizing emotions. This one is a negative emotion, that's a bad emotion, and this one is wonderful and good. But I in my research, I've discovered that love can be bad also if somebody is claiming to love you or trying to love you when you don't want them to love you. That's not a good thing. And so there are ways that all emotions have positive and negative aspects. But if we can learn to see them as friends, that's my friend. It's there bringing me a message to help me with the growing. I'm in a big giant school. I'm either going to suffer because I don't learn and grow, or I'm going to grow, and these friends are here to help me with it. That's that's my message to get to the world.
So what I hear you saying too earlier, you talked about how change is part of growth, right? So what about how would you help somebody who might not have the best relationship with change? What is your perspective on change so that you can continue to grow in each season?
Well, as a therapist, I generally, Shannon, describe how the system works. And I, for want of a better term, I talk about how the universe is presenting. It's usually a part of us, but I talk about the universe is presenting an opportunity for us to grow. And I can sit and talk with somebody, and we try to look at things from a different perspective. I think this is what therapists a lot do. What if you did this? What's the worst thing that could happen? Could you face that, et cetera, et cetera? And then help a person or encourage a person to come up with a plan for dealing with it. And often, as a therapist, like I'll meet with you this week, and you'll have an idea, a plan for how you're going to work with an emotion. And you come back the next week and you say, "Oh, I didn't do my homework." And my reaction is, you know, don't worry about a thing. It doesn't matter that you didn't do your homework. But do keep in mind that the universe is going to, now that it's presented this lesson to you, it's just going to keep presenting it and presenting it. And every time it presents it, it's going to be more painful. But you take as long as you want.
Now, Ilene, if I was your client, you could probably say that to me about I didn't do your homework. But just so you know, if it was Shannon, she'd have done her homework because it's in her
Uh huh.
planner and she
Okay.
And I
Well,
love
if
it.
you if you if you did do your homework, then you're already in the process of change, And
Yeah.
so we would look at maybe you did a fourth of what we talked about and didn't do the other three quarters. And then we do what is called a successive approximation. We reward you, we appreciate you for making the change that you did make. And then we examine, and anybody can do this with themselves. Then it was about simplicity. Keep that in mind. That's what I was going to say about
Mhm.
Awesome.
that anybody can do this. You just set your next goal. Okay, so what was it that I was going to do? I only got a fourth of it done. What was I going to do? And the next time you go a little further and you
Mhm.
appreciate yourself for doing that. You don't tear yourself apart because you didn't get it all done, you know?
Yes.
Just keep going until you get it done. I
I love that. And you remembered your comment about simplicity. What was that about?
Simplicity. Well, years ago, I went to the Picasso Museum, and uh, Picasso, when he was a teenager, his artwork was like a photograph. It was very detailed. If he drew a house, it had all the boards and everything. And then the way the museum is set up is they go through his blue period and his red period all the way, the whole museum. And by the time you get to the end, this is a horse. Wait a minute. This is a horse. That is a cloud, whatever. It's just one line. It's just simple. And it really drew my attention to the fact that people who are really adept do things simply. They aim for going for the simplest way of doing it. And that's part of my message about emotions, especially working with anger. Working with anger is simple. Children can do it. It's not always easy, but it's simple. And I'd like us to get back to more of a uh, dedication to having to doing things the simple way, and not diss that in any way, shape, or form.
And I know that this is something that you have coming up, Eileen, but would you mind telling us a little bit more about transforming anger into enthusiasm? I feel like that's what I've
Yes.
done with my mom passing away, chronic illness. I'm tired of women getting sick because nobody else is taking the time to make sure we're okay. We're taking the time to make sure everybody else is okay, and we're not getting to ourselves. So it's me.
Mhm.
I'm so upset about it. Let me go change the world. That's where I am with it, right? So how
Right.
would you advise somebody else to transform it?
Well, I'm definitely interested in changing the world, but I'm doing it after I have learned to take care of myself. And I think a lot of women, at least that I've worked with, feel like taking care of yourself is selfish. And in fact, it's the opposite. Uh, uh, think about, I start my life with a bank account that somebody has put $1 million in, and those $1 million are for caring for other people. If all I do is give those dollars away to other people, my bank account is eventually going to get empty, and I won't have it to use for me, and I won't be able to help anybody else either. But if I use some of those dollars to take care of other people, and I also take care of me, that puts money back in the account. And so I always have something for myself, and then others get what runs over from that. And when you do it the opposite, when you're saying, no, no, I'll put you first, you run out, you get irritable, you get sick, you get paranoid, you help nobody. You can't even help yourself, much less somebody else. So when I'm working with somebody in therapy, I ask them to consider the possibility that when we came to this earth, somebody took a little, like there's a cloth. I call it the God cloth. It's the essence of God, right? And they cut it up into small pieces. And when the soul leaves wherever it's leaving, somebody jams a piece of God cloth into you. So that every time you take care of yourself, you're taking care of God. And that's a whole different way to think about it. And every time you're not taking care of yourself or not doing well by yourself, that's what you're also doing to God.
Mm. I love that, Eileen. I love that imagery. And I love that. So I'm hearing you say transforming anger to enthusiasm is about taking care of ourselves along this journey.
Absolutely. Well, what we haven't learned, because we've been sitting on emotions all the time, is we have not learned that once you get them moving, they transform into something else. You know, uh, just like water turns into ice, or
Right.
every piece of every energy, like electricity or wind or water, that does work. You know, it does things in the world. And interestingly, anger, when you master it, when you're in charge of it, when you're working with it, when you partner with it to help you grow, it transforms into enthusiasm.
I love that. And I could say I personally see that. Absolutely. Like I said,
Good.
with I don't know if I would call it anger. Maybe I would. Being in touch with my emotions is something I'm working on, Eileen. That's why I love this conversation, right? But now I'm excited about Shayla Glow. I'm excited about women connected in wisdom. So I definitely don't think that I've stayed angry. I don't live there. And I definitely also hear you on the what did you say earlier about the relationship with somebody else? Oh, how it helps you adjust your expectations, right? You're angry. Well, what did you think was supposed to happen? And whether it's with my personal relationships and my friends or work, it's helped me not stay as black and white or
Mm.
one track minded in the way I thought something was supposed to happen. It opens you up to, well, I thought it was this way. We could have done it that way, but it happened this way. Are we still reaching our goal? Does it matter? And it's helped me kind of relax a little bit and
Mhm.
be healthier overall.
Well, just to piggyback on that, a lot of us, I talk with people all over North America as I travel, and I often tell them that I've written a book and that I'm a recovered angry person. And they,
Mm,
by and large, what
I love
people
that.
say to me is, I think I could use that book, or I know somebody who could use your book, you know.
Mhm,
So we all want to work on anger, but what I want to say is, what does it cost? We think we have a right to be angry. I have a right to
mhm,
be angry. You did this and you did that, or
Mhm.
this didn't happen, whatever. And we do. We have a right to be angry. But whenever I um, allow myself to be angry and dump that anger on you, then if I'm a responsible person living in the world, that's going to take me a long time to work through the repercussions. You're going
mhm,
to get angry back at me, then I'm going to get hurt, and then I'll be angry back at you. Or I have to, uh, at some point, come to the point of saying, gosh, I made a mistake there, or I didn't talk well to you. It takes so much effort. And
mhm,
instead, when you look at what you're feeling angry about, oh, let me just tie this into, we say, you made me angry. You didn't make me angry. You can't make me angry. What is causing me to feel angry is my own ideas about how things are supposed to be. So we want to blame other people for our anger. If instead we take responsibility and look for, what was I actually angry about? What did I think should or should not have happened? What is truthful, what can I do here?
mhm, mhm.
Then you're busy taking power, and you just move right through it. And I'm at the point now where you can never totally get rid of any emotion, because it's energy and we can't create or destroy energy, right? But my anger used to be enormous. Wait a minute, which way? There. My anger used to be like that, and now it's like that, right? So it comes up, and then I know what to do to deal with it, and it goes on. And I must say also, fear, loneliness, hurt, I don't do fear. I don't do those anymore. I just, oh, okay, so this is the issue. Uh, Fear, for example, I gave myself a 50th birthday present, uh, and figured out what you do to not have fear plague you anymore. And what you do is, the opposite of fear when you're working on this level is faith.
Mm.
So when you go into faith or trust, and so the way we're made up right now, if something happens, the first thing we do is go to the negative, which is the fear part, right? And that means that if we want to get to faith, and it's not a religious faith, it's faith like I have when I put my head on the pillow at night and have faith that I'm going to wake up the next day. It's that kind of faith. All right. So if I'm already in fear, how do I get myself over to faith? Right. And I made up this thing that works for me. Anybody who would like can use it. I ask myself, what if I had a written guarantee from God that everything's going to work out and I'm going to be okay? Then what would I be paying attention to? What decisions would I make? And what actions would I take? Now, I discovered that close to 30 years ago, right? And I started doing it just for the exercise of it, and it took me a while to realize that my life was changing. So now here I am, turning 80 this year, wandering around in my RV all over North America, and people say, "Aren't you afraid?" And I go, "No, I'm not afraid." "Well, you're so brave." No, bravery is we define as feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I don't feel the fear, right? And what I've replaced all of that with is love. I made a choice to have love the guiding principle of everything that I do. And like anybody, I'm not perfect, but boy, has it made a difference in my life to make that decision.
Ilene, that is so magical. I am so glad you came and talked to us today. I feel like we could keep talking for hours, and I can't wait to get your book and read your book. And
Good.
we may have some follow-up questions.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Well, I think you have my website. It's emotionalmasteryforlife.com.
We do,
Uh,
and we will put that in our show notes for all of our listeners too, so they can find you
right.
and get a hold of you. Is your website the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
The best way is by email, Ilene, Ilene, at emotionalpro, like professional,
Okay.
emotionalpro.com.
Hmm.
It's
We'll
because
put
I'm
that
terrible. I'm terrible at technical things, and everything's not up to date. So just write
Hmm.
me.
just right you. Okay, we will put
Just write
that
me.
in our show notes for folks to be able to find you.
Great.
And
Wonderful.
I want to lift up what Eleanor says. True faith is a mental attitude against which
Hmm.
there is no possibility of contradiction, by Robert Russell.
Hmm.
It's beautiful,
That's a lovely way. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And Eileen, every week we like to do a wisdom in action based on the dimension that we're talking about. So, for your emotional and mental wellness this week, what is your wisdom in action?
Tell me what a wisdom in action is. How do you
So,
define that?
so
I have
our goal
lots of
here,
stuff.
our goal here is to encourage the ladies, our listeners, to do something with the information that they get, right? We give resources, tell stories,
Uh,
and what are we actually doing? We're not just intaking information, we are acting out in the wisdom that we know. And
got
so,
it.
our wisdom
Got
in
it.
action, I'll go first to give you an example. I loved when you said busy taking power. So, that's my hashtag this week. Hashtag I'm busy taking power.
Very good. Well, I think a key message for me, one that has really been important, is that
Yes.
you don't have I mean, therapists are wonderful. We've been one for years, and I know that it's very helpful, but there's a lot we can do on our own. And we need to be partnering with emotions all the time. Whenever they come up, that's the best time to work with them. So this, I would suggest that you, number one, say, I'm no longer demonizing any emotions. I'm accepting them. I'm not going to say there's something wrong with me if I start feeling something. Instead, I'm going to get curious. What is this emotion trying to tell me? And if you want to check my book out, it gives you the message that I've learned it gives, a particular emotion gives. And so then say, okay, if this is my message, what can I do with it? The question I like to ask myself is, what am I trying to teach myself?
Ooh, I love that.
Right?
I think I'd
Right.
boil all that down, Ilene, to say hashtag partner with your emotions.
Okay.
Partner with your
Yes.
emotions. And I think the one I'm going to add too is hashtag change quicker. From
Yeah.
the things
Well,
we were.
actually, instead of change quicker, because that puts pressure on you. How
Okay.
about
Mhm.
embrace
Embrace
change?
change. Oh, I
Oh, I
like
like
that.
that.
I like that
Yeah,
gentle.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to do things fast, Eileen, but I
Me
like
too.
that
I
embrace
do too.
change.
But what I've learned as a therapist, and you likely know
Mhm,
this too, we have a tendency, if we want to change or we think we should change,
mhm,
um, to push ourselves
mhm.
and to say whatever it is that we're seeing needs change as a negative. And I have never seen anybody change effectively when they've been pushed or dealt with through negativity.
Mhm.
But when you love what's happening to you, you love the emotions that are coming up, you love that you're a learner, you love the learning, then you change faster and faster and faster all the time. It gets easier and easier and easier.
Oh, what a great thing to end on. What great
Yes.
words of wisdom. Eileen, thank you so much for coming and talking with us today.
It's
We are
my
so
pleasure. Thank
grateful
you.
to be connected with you, and we will put all these links in our show notes for so our listeners can find you and connect with you. And we will also keep us posted on when that TEDx talk comes out, and
Yes.
we will make sure our listeners get all that info so they can see you on that stage.
We should spend time together for years because I've got 10 books outlined now and I'm writing on the first one.
Hello.
Yes,
It's a
please.
core book talking about the earth as a giant school, and then 9 books on individual emotions.
I
We
can't
might have
wait, Eileen.
and we might have to make it 11, Eileen. Maybe we talk about volume 2 or volume 3 of our book, so
Right?
we can be in
Well, and
the
the other
emotional
thing I was
mental.
thinking is, we offer classes and workshops through our Women Connected in Wisdom community. So we need
Mhm.
to talk offline about getting you to come be one of our teachers.
I would
We
love
would
that.
love that. So,
I would love that too. And
all
I get to
right.
come to Georgia. Think of it.
Yes,
Woo-hoo.
please.
Spend my
Well,
childhood in Georgia.
thank you so much for being here. We're going to pop you back into the green room and we're going to wrap this show for today.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, so much fun. We could have kept talking for hours,
Emotional mental is so important. It's so
right?
big.
It is. Well, and I love this whole concept of
Mhm.
making friends with your emotions
Mhm.
and embracing change and and the emotions on the move. I'm all over that, like, and being
Mhm.
embodied on how we do this. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
that was some
excited
good
about it.
stuff.
And I hear you too on the change faster. I've been there before when I took too long to get the lesson. Like Eileen said, the pain level will start going up.
Mhm.
And we talk about tolerance. Why does your tolerance have to be so high? You don't have to do that every time. Bring
Right?
the boundary down a little bit so that
Right?
we can um, be effective and, not spend more time than we should in unhealthy situations, things like that.
I really loved that gentle shift though she
Yeah,
did
it's
about
important.
embrace change. That was
Embrace
beautiful.
change.
That was
Yeah.
beautiful. Anything you want to give a shout out for before we close this
Oh,
up for today?
I don't know if I've told you this, but yeah, I have a huge shout out. So this Saturday, the 30th, from 10 to 4, and I'll be there actually, let's say from 10 to 2, because I have to go to work after. We are having our soft launch for our retail space on
What?
Auburn Avenue. So I'm so excited. We have a lot of goals coming up, right? But the retail space is definitely one of them. So we're rebranding, coming out to the retail space. And if you guys are in Atlanta or can make a trip out here for this John Lewis event on the 30th in Atlanta, you can see Shalo Glow and get some of our new lemongrass glow kits.
What? Okay, so can we put a link to this in the show notes so folks
Yes,
can find you and come
I
say
will get
hi?
it.
And if
Yes,
y'all drop by that soft opening, which I need all those details,
I
I
will
need to
get it to
pop
you.
by. Y'all
Yes.
pop in and say you listen to Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. And we are grateful that you listen every week. And
Hmm.
make sure you like and subscribe. It really does help us
Yeah.
get the word out if you like and subscribe. And
Yeah.
we are just grateful to be in conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for 77 episodes now that we are at the end of this one. And we will see you back live at 5 next week. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. Thank you so much.